started with the static, last Halloween. My old TV, the kind with the thick glass screen that always seemed too heavy to move, began turning itself on at night, always around 3 in the morning. The picture was just static and white noise, hissing quietly in the dark. At first, I thought it was an electrical glitch. I'd get up, unplug it, and go back to bed. But one night, the static wasn't white anymore. It was grey, moving, almost forming shapes. I froze on the couch, blinking. Maybe I was dreaming. But the shapes shifted again. It looked like a man standing in a fog, his body flickering with the static. I rubbed my eyes and leaned closer, but it didn't disappear. His face, or what should have been his face, was just blackness. I turned the TV off, but the static hissed for another few seconds, then stopped. I sat in the dark, heart pounding, telling myself it was just my imagination. But then I heard it, a soft crackle coming from the hallway. The TV was off. I gripped my phone like a weapon and slowly walked toward the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last. The closer I got, the louder the crackle became, until it was almost a low roar in my ears. I stopped at the end of the hallway. The noise stopped, dead silence. Then my phone's light flickered and went out. Not the battery, it was fully charged. I could still see the faint glow of the streetlights through the blinds. That's when I noticed the smell. Something burned, but wet, like plastic melting mixed with something rotting. And then I heard it, breathing, slow, wet, deliberate, right in front of me. I froze, my stomach twisting. I could hear it draw in a long breath, then exhale like it was testing me. My instincts screamed to run, but I couldn't move. Then, a whisper. It came from the darkness just past the hallway. "Can you see me now?" I barely breathed as I shined my phone in the direction of the sound. For a split second I saw it, grey flesh, twisted and burned. Eyes like black holes, leaking static. The shape was human enough to be terrifying, but wrong enough that my brain refused to accept it. I stumbled back, tripping over my own feet, and fell to the ground. When I looked up, it was gone. Only the faint, lingering smell of burnt plastic remained. I sat there for what felt like hours, too scared to move. When I finally dared to crawl to my bedroom, I tried to convince myself it was over, that it had been a hallucination caused by too much late-night TV. I woke up hours later on the floor. My phone was shattered, the TV was unplugged, but the static was still there, faint in the back of my mind, a lingering hum that made my teeth ache. I threw the TV out the next day. It went straight to the dumpster behind the building. I didn't even look back. 2 weeks later, I came home from work and found my laptop open. There was a new video file on the desktop called Channel Zero. My heart sank. When I played it, all I saw was static and my own bedroom from the corner of the ceiling. Every movement, every shadow was captured. And in the last few seconds of the clip, the static shifted, and for a half second, I saw that figure, grey, burned, faceless, just standing in the middle of the room, watching. I haven't slept properly since. Even now, I can hear the faint hiss if the room is completely silent, as if the TV never really left. Last Halloween, I worked the closing shift at a Spirit Halloween store. We shut down around midnight, and I was the one stuck doing inventory. It was me, my manager Kyle, and a security guard who only worked the night shifts. The store was empty, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the endless loop of Monster Mash playing over the speakers. It was one of those nights where the quiet itself feels wrong, like the shadows are leaning in just a little too close. We were packing up leftover costumes, folding, stacking, and checking the shelves when I noticed something strange. One of the mannequins near the front door was wearing a costume I didn't recognize. It was an old-fashioned clown suit, yellowed fabric, frilled collar, red buttons down the chest. Thing is, we didn't sell anything like that. I asked Kyle if he'd put it there as a joke. He said no. The security guy swore he hadn't seen it before. We laughed nervously, thinking maybe one of the early customers had left it behind. But when I went to move it to the back, the mannequin's head turned, just slightly, but enough to make my stomach drop. I stared, trying to convince myself I was imagining it, but then I noticed the texture of the skin on its hands. Warm, slightly damp. I stepped back. I didn't know what to do. Then I realized. It wasn't a mannequin. It was a person, or whatever was left of a person. The skin on its face was pale and stretched tight. The mouth was sewn shut with black thread. The eyes were open, glossy, painted over in white, but somehow still alive. I screamed and stumbled back. Kyle ran over, and we both watched as it swayed forward, almost like it was testing us. The security guard grabbed a flashlight and shined it directly on the thing. It toppled over, but underneath the costume was dried, dark blood, flaking off in chunks. I called the cops immediately. While we waited, Kyle went to check the security cameras. When he came back, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. There was no footage of anyone bringing the mannequin in, but around 11:45, the cameras near the back room glitched. For 10 seconds, the feed went completely black. When the feed returned, the clown was standing in the middle of the store. No one had walked through the door. No sign of anyone entering or leaving. When the police arrived, they found a note tucked into the pocket of the costume. "Thanks for the new look." They also discovered stitching needles, bits of fabric, and what looked like human hair in the fitting rooms. A few scraps of skin too, like someone had been using the store to make a disguise. The store shut down a week later. I quit before that, but the guy who took my job texted me on Halloween this year. He said the night shift started off fine until they found a new mannequin standing by the register. This one was wearing a store uniform, and the mask looked a lot like my old manager Kyle. When I was a kid, my town had this pumpkin patch that only opened on Halloween night. They said the pumpkins grew better that way. Something about the moonlight and the way the soil absorbed the magic, or so the old farmers claimed. My friends and I, curious and stupid, decided one year to sneak out there after dark. We were 14, adrenaline pumping, laughing nervously as we climbed over the fence at the far edge of the field. The air was crisp, cold, and smelled faintly of damp earth. The field stretched out forever, hundreds of pumpkins glowing dimly under the light of the full moon. Some were enormous, wider than a trash can, others small, barely bigger than a football. Their shapes were perfect and round, carved with care, or so it seemed from the shadows. We started carving right there in the field, using the pocket knives we'd brought. I picked a medium-sized one with a bumpy orange skin. As I sliced into it, the knife met something soft, not the usual pulp. I froze. My heart started racing. I dug my fingers into the pumpkin to pull it apart. It wasn't pumpkin guts. It was like tissue, wet, slick, and cold. I yanked my hand back, and it was covered in blood. Not bright red, more like dark, thick rust. We screamed and ran back toward the road, hearts pounding, but the path seemed wrong. The pumpkins weren't where we had left them. They were closer now. Their stems twitched like they were watching us. And then we heard it, breathing, slow, collective, almost synchronized. Hundreds of small rises and falls in the night. The pumpkins themselves seemed alive. One cracked open right near me. Something oozed out, something pale, slick and shiny. Its eyes, or whatever they were, looked like pumpkin seeds forced into sockets. The thing moved too fast for me to react. It slithered over the dirt, wet and horrifying, disappearing under a larger pumpkin, then reappearing somewhere else. We ran. I don't remember the exact path. Everything felt like a blur. Branches clawed at our arms, and the ground was soft and wet under our feet. Our laughter from earlier had vanished, replaced by raw, panicked screams. When we finally reached the fence, I thought we were safe. But as I turned back, I saw hundreds of pumpkins in the moonlight, pulsing and trembling like they had hearts. They seemed aware, alive, almost mocking us. We never spoke about that night in detail. The field the next morning was gone, just flat dirt, not a single pumpkin remained. But over the years, I've noticed a pattern. Every Halloween, one kid in our town disappears. No notes, no witnesses, no explanations, just gone. And the next day, in the empty lot where the field had been, a single pumpkin appears, carved into the shape of their screaming face. I'm older now, I tell myself it's coincidence, but every Halloween, when the moon is full and I see pumpkins on someone's porch, I feel that same cold dread creeping up my spine. Halloween used to be my favourite night of the year, until last year. I'd just moved into a quiet suburban neighbourhood, one of those picture-perfect streets with glowing jack-o'-lanterns on every porch and fake cobwebs stretching from tree to tree. I didn't know anyone yet, but I wanted to fit in, so I set out a big bowl of candy and waited by the door with a drink, enjoying the cool fall air. The first trick-or-treaters came around 7. Normal kids, princesses, superheroes, a few ghosts. I laughed and dropped candy into their bags, saying, "Happy Halloween." The street was alive with the sound of laughter and squeaky sneakers on the sidewalk. By 9, most of the kids were gone. That's when the doorbell rang again. I opened it, and 3 kids were standing there in old-fashioned costumes. Paper-mache masks that looked homemade, cracked and faded. One was a clown with paint peeling off the cheeks. One looked like a scarecrow, straw poking out at odd angles. The last one was blank. No eyes, no mouth, nothing. They didn't say trick or treat. They just stood there, motionless, breathing quietly through the masks. I laughed nervously and dropped candy in their bags. "Happy Halloween," I said. They didn't move. I shut the door quickly, heart pounding. As soon as the latch clicked, I heard the doorbell again. The same kids, same masks. This time, the blank one was holding the candy I had just given them, crushed into a wet, sticky pile in their hands. I stumbled back, unsure if I should scream or call someone. I told them to leave, but they didn't. They just tilted their heads in perfect unison and walked off into the shadows. An hour later, I was lying in bed when I heard footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate, heavy enough to make me tense, but soft enough that I couldn't tell exactly how many. Then a knock, 3 soft raps, spaced evenly. I peeked through the blinds. Nothing. The porch was empty. But on the steps were 3 small candy bags, my candy. I grabbed my phone and flashlight and went outside. The street was completely silent. Not a leaf rustled, no distant car hum, no other houses' lights flickering. My own breath fogged in the cold air as I knelt down and picked up one of the bags and froze. Inside weren't candy bars or little toys. It was teeth. Tiny, human teeth, some broken, some chipped, and each one was coated in dark, sticky blood. I bolted inside and locked every door and window. I called the cops, but while I waited, I heard scratching at the back door. Not light scratching, not a random animal. This was deliberate, heavy, like someone was carving into the wood with their fingernails or a knife. When the police arrived, they found nothing outside. No footprints, no kids. The door had no new damage, except for 3 words carved deep into the wood. Trick or treat. They wrote it off as a prank, maybe some older kids messing with me. 2 days later, I woke up to a package on my porch. A single mask, the blank one. Except this time, there was a face inside it. Dried grey skin, stretched tight over bone, and a frozen smile. I haven't opened my door after dark since. And last night, just before midnight, the doorbell rang again.